The Hall of Fame. That's what we're dealing with now. It was 120 years ago last week that the British Labour Party was formed. Although the way it's going, I wouldn't bank on it being around for another 120 years. The founder, and therefore the latest inductee into the mother of all talk shows Hall of Fame, is James Keir Hardie, born into unimaginable poverty, but who fought to create not just a better life for himself, but for all working people. He was born on August the 15th, day before me, in 1856, in a two-room cottage on the western edge of Newhouse, a small town close to Motherwell in Scotland. His mother, Mary Keir, was a domestic servant. His stepfather, David Hardie, was a ship's carpenter. He went to work at the age of 7 as a message boy for a shipping company. Although deprived of schooling, his parents spent evenings teaching him to read and write. Ponder that. The founder of the Labour Party, Keir Hardie, left school at 7 and joined the workforce as a message boy. He had no schooling. When the great lockout of Clydeside shipyard workers took place, and the men, they were all men, including his stepfather, were sent home for 6 months, needless to say, without pay, with their main source of income terminated, the family was forced to sell all their possessions to pay for food, with Mr. Hardie and little Keir's meagre earnings the only remaining source of income for the household. One sibling took ill and died in miserable conditions. Making matters worse, young Keir lost his job for turning up late on 2 occasions. At the age of 10 years old, Keir Hardie, the founder of the Labour Party, went to work in the coal mines as a trapper at 10. His job was opening and closing a door for a 10-hour shift in order to maintain the air supply for the miners at the coal face. Hardie also began to attend night school. Keir, as he was now called, longed for a life outside the coal mines. So, encouraged by his mother, learned to read and write shorthand. He also began to associate with the Temperance Union and to preach in his local church, all of which helped him to learn the art of public speaking. Before long, Keir Hardie was looked to by other miners as a logical chairman for their meetings and spokesman for their grievances. Mine owners, however, began to see him as an agitator, and he and 2 younger brothers were blacklisted from working in the local mining industry. But if the owners thought that blacklisting would stop him, they were sorely wrong. At 23 years old, Keir Hardie moved seamlessly from the mines to union organisation. In May 1879, Scottish mine owners combined to force a reduction in wages, which had the effect of spurring the demand for trade unionisation. Hardie was chosen by the miners as their delegate to a national conference of miners in Glasgow. He was appointed miners' agent in August 1879, and his new career as a trade union organiser was launched. Keir Hardie was active in the wave of strikes which swept the country in 1880, including a general strike of the mines in Lanarkshire, which lasted for 6 weeks over the summer of 1880. However, the union had no money, and he and others had to gather food from striking families from local merchants upon promise of future payment. A soup kitchen was kept running in Keir Hardie's home during the course of the strike, manned by his new wife, Lily. To make ends meet, Hardie turned to journalism, starting to write for the local newspaper. He joined the Liberal Association, in which he was active, and he also continued his temperance work. For younger viewers and listeners, he was campaigning against the evil of drink. Despite his early support for the Liberal Party, Keir Hardie became disillusioned by Gladstone's economic policies, which he saw would not benefit the working class. So he stood for Parliament as an independent Labour candidate in 1888. But he finished last. Remember that. He finished last. Undaunted, he was instrumental in a public meeting in Glasgow, which founded the Scottish Labour Party, with Keir Hardie becoming its first secretary. In 1892, he stood for Parliament again, this time in London, in West Ham South, and he defeated the Conservative candidate. On taking his seat, Keir Hardie refused to wear the parliamentary uniform of black frock coat, black silk top hat, and starched wing collar the other working class MPs, Liberals, wore. Instead, he wore a plain tweed suit, a red tie, and a deerstalker hat. In Parliament, Keir Hardie advocated a graduated income tax, free schooling, pensions, the abolition of the House of Lords, and for women's right to vote, and, I should add, for proportional representation. However, Keir Hardie was no liberal on immigration. He argued for a complete ban. According to him, the migrant workers in the mining industry were driving standards down. In 1900, Keir Hardie organised a meeting of various trade unions and socialist groups, and they agreed to form the LRC, the Labour Representation Committee, which shortly became the Labour Party. Later that same year, Hardie, standing for Labour, was elected to the constituency of Merthyr Tydfil in the South Wales Valley, which he would represent for the remainder of his life. Hardie spent his remaining years campaigning for votes for women. His secretary, Margaret Simmons Travers, was the first woman to speak in the Houses of Parliament when she tricked her way in October 1908, interrupting a debate and shouting, "Votes for women." He also campaigned for self-rule for India and an end to segregation in South Africa. A pacifist, Hardie was appalled by the First World War and tried to organise a general strike against it. Finally, after a series of strokes, he died in hospital in Glasgow at noon on the 26th of September 1915. He was just 59. Keir Starmer, the leading candidate to lead Labour, was named after Hardie. I'm pretty sure the original would not have been much impressed. You see, the greatness of Keir Hardie is that he understood that the Liberal Party could not represent the interests of the working people because it already represented the interests of the employers, the industrialists, the bourgeoisie. He knew that it was not possible for a party to represent both of these classes at the same time because their class interests were antithetical. They were opposite to each other. The interests of the employer was to get the worker to work for longer for less. The interests of the worker was to work for less for more, and that twain could never meet. It was the greatness of Keir Hardie that he understood that the interests of the working class were entire and separate from the other classes in society, and that every country needs a Labour Party, a party that will stand up for the workers. And I'm going to tell you this: if you think Keir Starmer intends to lead the Labour Party into standing up for the workers against the interests of those who exploit them, who cheat them, then you're living in a fool's paradise. I believe that the Labour Party is on its way to extinction as a party of the working class, and a very large number of working class people have already so concluded. They've so concluded by their votes. They have voted with their feet. They have left the Labour Party. They have never joined it, when in previous generations their parents and grandparents did. There are working class people right now beyond the red wall that have voted for Boris Johnson. So betrayed did they feel by the Labour Party, and that was the Labour Party as was under the titular leadership, at least, of Jeremy Corbyn. Although the truth is, by the end, Jeremy Corbyn was in office but not in power. Keir Starmer was in power, and he's about to be elected, probably by a landslide victory, as the leader of the Labour Party. And over the next couple of years, Keir Hardie, his namesake, will be turning in his grave as Keir Starmer completes the project of final severance, the final separation of the Labour Party from the working class in Britain. The wall of shame has a new name on it this evening. It's Narendra Modi, about whom we have spoken tonight. The butcher of Gujarat has become the butcher of Delhi. The man who was banned from traveling here and to the United States because of his role in the mass murder of Muslims in Gujarat has done it again. But not only the murder of Muslims in Delhi, but the murder of Sikhs in the Punjab, the murder of Christians for eating beef, the murder of the people in occupied Kashmir. There is now a critical mass of populations repressed and murdered by the fanatics of the Hindutva RSS and its political party, the BJP. The India that we knew, the India that many of us loved, the India of Mr. Gandhi and Mr. Nehru, the India of Mrs. Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi, is not the India of today. The India of today is one of hideous, sectarian, religious fanaticism, which is in danger of burning itself down. The bonfires of the poor Muslims on the outskirts of Delhi, poor, living in shacks, those bonfires may spread a bushfire, a conflagration that burns down the India we once knew.